Lord. So a name of the Supreme Lord is also Sanatana. The living entities are also Sanatana. The abode of the Lord is Sanatana, and the connection with the Lord is Sanatana Dharma, because relationship means two, and then the exchange between the two. So our Sanatana Dharma is to serve Krishna, Jiver Swarupaya Nityara Krishna Das, and that should be the governing principle for a sadhaka, because that's the topic. How to engage in relationships with devotees, non-devotees, and others. Start with the core principle. We haven't realized it yet, but we're in doing sadhana, we're doing practices that are meant to help us realize who we really are. And directing our attention in relationships to the Supreme Sanatana, the Supreme Person, Krishna Das consciousness, or Krishna consciousness, the essence of all relationships is to serve Krishna. The essence of all relationships is to serve Krishna. And in that service to Krishna principle, recognizing we're not there yet, we're doing sadhana. We haven't reached the goal, but we're doing sadhana. So we sadhakas, try to bear in mind what the goal is while we're engaged in relationships. And the relationship is service to Krishna, and therefore our relationships with others is service to Krishna. Then we expand the circle. So the service to Krishna is at this very center. If you picture in your mind some concentric circles, the concentric circle at the very, very center is to please Krishna. And then there are various persons who we interact with that go outward like a pebble splashing in a pond. The concentric circles go outwards. And the best principle for a sadhaka is to try to align our intention, and behind it, following intention, driven by intention, is our actions and speech, where the purpose is pleasing Krishna, satisfying Krishna. Now, whether others do that or don't do that makes for different relationships. And if even for those that do, there's variety. So there's variety in our relationships with devotees. In principle, is we cooperate together. This is our founder Acharya's teaching. We cooperate together, even with differences, recognizing differences, honoring differences, with the unity. Prabhupada calls this unity in diversity. Unity is we're all parts and parcels of Krishna meant for satisfying him, and there's all kinds of diversity out there in the devotee community, where even aside from ISKCON devotees, there's other devotees. There's other devotees of the Lord besides ISKCON devotees, and we want to see Krishna is pleased, and we're respectful in principle to that spirit that the devotee has, the devotee of the Lord has, in trying to satisfy Krishna. And that's a very simple explanation of the principle of Vaishnava association. Now let's go a little bit further. We'll circle back around again to the original question. A little bit further, there's those that are not devotees. And then for those who are not devotees, there are categories. There are those that are innocent and those that are inimical. And we're taught by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and its Rupa Goswami and our scriptures that we extend compassion to those who are innocent, and the madhyama, that's us, sadhakas, madhyamas, middle range, we carefully avoid the unwholesome, those who are inimical to Krishna, the atheists and blasphemers and those types of people. And we avoid their association. So for non-devotees, there's categories, and there's subcategories of those categories. And then other relationships, so let's say other relationships might include family. And in your family, this is a very important area, because let's take the concentric circle example again. You drop a pebble in a pond of water, and concentric circles expand out. So at the center is pleasing Krishna, and the most immediate circle following that circle is the spiritual master and those that guide one in spiritual life, those from whom we receive nourishment, the sadhus, from whom we receive nourishment are the teachers or our parents, those who are properly situated teachers and parents and sadhus. They're sadhu-like. Those are most important in pleasing Krishna, and the opposite, not displeasing, not offending. And then keep going in concentric circles out. Those with whom we associate regularly, that's family members. So family members, relationships with family members is highly important. And there's differences, because there were three categories in the question: devotees, non-devotees, and other. So this is in the other. The family members may be whatever they may be. They may be devotees. They may not be devotees, but they're family members. This question comes up as we expand the Hare Krishna movement. We find all kinds of situations where people in the family are not inclined, or they're worse than not inclined. They're obstructionists. And without doing anecdotal examples, there are different ways, but the foundational way is service with respect. How to deal with family members in all circumstances starts with a foundation of service with respect. Now, that respect is going to have different manifestations depending upon the family member, and even depending upon the circumstances with that family member, because that can change over time, as we all have experience. And the fundamental, one more time, as sadhakas, we respect. And it's important to maintain that even when there's irritation, because as we know, the adage, familiarity breeds contempt. It's really easy. It's quite natural, in fact, that when we associate regularly with somebody, whoever it may be, starting with family members, but others with whom we associate regularly, we'll start to see things that we weren't seeing, that others may not see, because they're not regularly associating. That is, we'll see the strengths and the weaknesses. And that should not diminish the respect, but it shouldn't diminish the mood of service either. Now, how to navigate that territory is essential for sadhakas. Because supposing you don't navigate that territory nicely, then you're going to have difficulty in many, if not most, if not all of your relationships. If you can't sustain the principle of respect and the mood of service. The respect goes to the soul. We don't have a spiritual conception. How are we going to maintain respect? How are we going to have genuine respect, for starters? So that requires a spiritual conception, and supposing we're not so spiritual yet, we're not going to do very well in our sadhana. We're not going to do very well in our relationships. There are going to be lots of challenges. So for a sadhaka to spiritualize those relationships that are very close, and when there's close association, there's some understanding of strengths and weaknesses. What do you do? How do you conduct yourself in that situation? Humility, mood of service, and respect. That the principle doesn't change. The principle doesn't change. It's just managing, making wise decisions, and aligning your behaviors along with your values with that very principle, unchanging manner of conducting our affairs with others, like starting with family and then concentric circles out. Something that will be very helpful, if not mandatory, is having proper relationships with sadhu, meaning spiritual master or spiritual masters, and those from whom we receive. There's a very nice teaching. I spent several classes recently have been on this principle of gratitude. The Sanskrit phrase is krita gya. Gya means knowing, and krita means favor. Krita gya means acknowledging a favor that one has received, some kindness, something that one has received from others. And krita gya means to honor that. And honor that, according to Ramayana, without all the details because of time, it's you recognize there's a cognizant part, there's an affective part, you feel something, you feel gratitude, and then you want to do something in reciprocation. When that gratitude is there with those who have given you something, like mother and father have given so many, have given life, and they've given so many. So it's a natural, it's according to Ramayana, this is the foundational principle for Sanatana Dharma. There we are, there's Sanatana Dharma again. That circling back to where we started, Sanatana Dharma, the characteristic of the soul in eternality is kritagya. Don't lose it and revive it. And how do you display that? Everything depends upon the circumstance, but it's foundational, fundamental. Work closely with those guiding you in spiritual life, nourishing your spiritual life, starting with our founder Acharya, a sense of gratitude, which means, for example, you hear his classes, you read his books, and you try to live by his teachings. Here's a very nice example of this. For example, Srila Prabhupada was requested to give a speech at the time of the Gandhi Memorial, the ceremony upon the demise of Mahatma Gandhi. And because he was previously a strong follower of Mahatma Gandhi, he was requested to give a speech. So he did. And along with giving a speech, there was a paper. And in the paper about honoring Gandhi, he explained, the way to honor a great person is not, here's what it's not, simply name a street after that person or a building after that person or make a statue of that person, put in a public place, and that's how you honor a great person. That's not how to honor a great person. How to honor the great person is to recognize the values and principles of living that they upheld and create an atmosphere where persons can live by those principles. He then went on to say, because Mahatma Gandhi was so fond of Bhagavad Gita, then one should create a place where Gita is lived, Gita Nagari. That's a behavior that's driven by a value that's resting upon a fundamental unchanging principle that you honor someone, you respect someone, you show your appreciation for what you've received from that someone by living your life according to their teachings and encouraging others, creating a situation where others can also live according to those teachings. So that's starts with sadhu, then it goes to family, and then you go in concentric circles out. You associate closely with devotees, and there's ranges of devotees, as you all know. Those more advanced, those equal, and those less advanced. And there's particular relationships according to those three: more advanced peers and less advanced. And then the innocent. They're not devotees, they're non-devotees yet, but within the soul is that natural propensity. And so you act in a friendly manner, a service manner, and what is that made up of? You remind them of Krishna. Because the struggles that people go through, ourselves included, is because of forgetfulness of Krishna. And to a friendly gesture, a service gesture, is to remind them of Krishna. We'll say the flip. The flip side is supposing you don't do that. Supposing you don't do that. That's violence. This is a nice teaching. Non-violence means not harming others, but a higher sense of non-violence is relieving people of their suffering. When you have the means to help people no longer suffer, you do that. But if you have the means and you don't administer it, that's violence. So be nonviolent in that sense with others, the innocent. And then be nonviolent with also, or be in the mood of service to those who are inimical by not giving them the opportunity overtly to make further offense and further offense and further offense. Nonetheless, devotees in relationships with the people of this world they take risk anyways. They extend themselves to help people, of course, according to capacity and so forth, but find ways and means to help those persons amongst the other non-devotees who are innocent and can benefit from sadhu sangha. So that's something that we do in relationships with others. There's a very nice, to amplify the importance, I like the question, and one of the reasons I like the question is, scripturally speaking, it's so important. How do we know it's scripturally speaking it's so important? Here's two references. One of them is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, where he is asked in one circumstance, who is a devotee? How do we understand who is a devotee? What's a characteristic of a devotee? I've already mentioned this characteristic means service to Krishna. So a characteristic of a devotee is one, carefully gives up intimate association with non-devotees. Asat Sangha Tyag E Vaishnav Achar. Achar, the behavior of a Vaishnav is they carefully avoid intimate association with non-devotees. Now, what does that look like? Because that's what the question is. How do we conduct ourselves in relationship with others who aren't devotees? There's a second reference from Rupa Goswami. I'm sure you all are familiar. His Nectar of Instruction, very important book. And there's two lists where Rupa Goswami in that short text, 11 verses, indicates there's 6 things that destroy bhakti, 6 things that enhance bhakti, and association, relationships, falls into both. of the 6 things on this and that side, it makes it on the list of the 6 for both. Jana Sangha and Sangha Tyaga. So I sent to Satyavrata the digital version of those 2 from Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Bhakti Aloka, so you can read it and understand it. And I'll just say a couple of things that are from that section of Bhakti Aloka. So the launching point is relationships. This question that I've been asked to speak about is so important that Rupa Goswami has placed it in both things that are beneficial and things that are detrimental, or vinashati, that can destroy bhakti. That detrimental. You get this one right, because you can destroy your bhakti if you don't. And on the other side, seeking. So what about the non-devotee persons? How are we supposed to handle that? Because there's lots of non-devotees in this world. Supposing, because this is a question that comes up, supposing you go to work, and in the workplace there's some non-devotees. Supposing there's some non-devotees in the workplace. It's all over the place. Now what do you do? And the Rupa Goswami says, don't associate with them. So what do you do? Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains, so please read. Here's what a householder does. They maintain, because the respect is to be there, they maintain cordial relationships. How are you doing? How was your vacation? How are the kids? And all those, social things. Polite, cordial. Bhaktivinoda Thakur exemplified this in his personal life. However, intimate dealings, such as inquiring from them, how should I make a decision on this important matter in my life? Or there's a conflict over there, how do I navigate my way in dealing with this conflict that's there in my life? We don't discuss those things with the non-devotee group. We go to the devotee group. And depending upon the devotee, we discuss those topics that are of the soul. They're confidential in helping us reach the destination. So we maintain cordial, not just cosmetic, but cordial, out of respect, because within that co-worker there in the workplace, there's a spirit soul. They may be whatever they may be, but they're a spirit soul, so respect goes to the soul. And we don't harm them, and we try to act in such a way by our character and by our speech. We want to remind them of Krishna. At least we want to exemplify what Bhagavad Gita says. And don't go away from what Bhagavad Gita says when you're in the workplace, when you're with those other people in close association, where they know that you're a devotee. They may not know that you're a devotee, but they'll see characteristics in you that are wholesome, and that's attractive, even for people that are disturbed and disturbing. When they see a wholesome person, it's powerful. So be like that in the workplace or in other situations where, as a householder or as a person in this world, we want to demonstrate Vaishnava character. We want to display it. We want to be it. We want to be, all those things, be tolerant, simple, clean, truthful, etc. We maintain those standards in our association with worldly people. All the while thinking, in what way can I be in further service to Krishna? Because here's the soul, Krishna's part and parcel. In what way can I remind them of Krishna? And if you have that consciousness, Krishna will provide circumstances where those right people, you can remind them of Krishna a little more directly than just good speech and good character, good conduct. Now, the topic is really big. I mean, we're social beings. And as social beings, relationships are important. So while we're pursuing a life of sadhya, trying to reach the goal, our sadhana is important in terms of relationships because we're social beings. We want friendships. We want to love and be loved. And how do you navigate your way when there's all kinds of differences out there amongst the devotees? All, horizontal and vertical differences. All kinds of differences. How do you stay fixed in the principle Jiver Swarupaya Nityara Krishna Das? Well, that's something that has to be accepted within the heart. So, therefore, your core spiritual practices, the quality and the manner in which you take up your chanting, your reading, your taking interest in the topics of Krishna, in the association of devotees as well, learning those Vaishnava exchange skills will help you please Krishna. If you may not be there yet, that's okay. Keep aligning yourself to that principle, and purification will come because Krishna will be pleased. And forgive others if they make some transgression, just as you may, even unknowingly, make some transgression that disturbs others. Be forgiving and move forward with your mission, pleasing Krishna mission. So there are some principles. Of course, application of principles is where it gets a little complicated. And so each situation is a little different, and then the situation shifts a little bit, and so you have to be flexible in application of principle, but stay fixed in principle. I'll do it one more time. Just, a visual image that's very helpful in understanding how to deal with relationships is the concentric circle example. So picture in your mind a pebble or small stone hitting a very calm pond, and there's a little splash in the center, and then there's concentric circles that expand out and out and out right to the perimeter of the pond. Those concentric circles going out are the different relationships, starting with Krishna at the center, and then next to Krishna at the center are the relationships with those who are your teachers or those who are your gurus, those who are significant persons who help you and have helped you in your spiritual life, and then your family, and then the community, and keeps going out, concentric circles. The principle doesn't change, and learn the principle, live by it, and practice it, cultivate it, keep the association of those who also do, and it'll grow. And that's going to be the determining factor in your relationships of these three categories: devotees, non-devotees, and other. So now I'm looking at the TV screen. So let's see if there's some discussion. We're 40 minutes into our topic. We'll take some discussion time and see where it goes. I see a hand raised. Go ahead, speak up.
Krishna.
I can't see the names because the screen is too far away, but whoever's in the upper left, whoever's that. Why don't you call on people? You were the MC. Satyavrata?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my most humble obeisances at the lotus feet. We are extremely grateful to you, Maharaj. This class is very, very inspiring and instructive. Last few days, exactly we are talking about this topic with Sandeep Prabhu and his wife. And that's why we requested you to speak on this subject. So my question is that when there is a misunderstanding between two devotees, and at that point sometimes our false ego hurts. So what step we should take so that the gap between our relationship does not expand?
Okay. First of all, again, thank you for selecting the topic. And now I understand why it was selected. Second of all, I sent you 2 documents which you can circulate to others from Bhakti Loka, Janasangha, and Satovrate. So the members can look and examine what Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written elaborately on this topic. And now to your specific question is 3, and that is you a few things. Become familiar with principles of spiritual life and spiritual relationships. 1. And 2, develop the skill or the art, the internal art of mode of goodness. The mode of goodness begins with when there's a misunderstanding or something that irritates, whatever it is, you go to a pause position. The pause position is you become reflective. Mode of goodness. You reflect on the situation. Another option, which you don't want to do, is become reactive. You just go into the mode of defending or proving you're right or, something. And I've been misunderstood and I'm going to, yada, yada, yada. I'm going to do something. So don't go into the reactive. Go into the reflective mode, a mode of goodness mode. And you practice that and it becomes really easy. It's just easy. It's really, the other is not easy. The other is very unpleasant. So you go to the easy, go to the reflective mode, and hit the reset button and say to yourself, what's my mission in life? My mission in life is to please Krishna. Here's a situation where it may be that I'm getting an opportunity to please Krishna in a different way. So what's the best procedure for me to please Krishna in this circumstance where there's a misunderstanding between me and another person or whatever it is that's going on? How to be in service to Krishna and serving another. If I'm in the mood of serving Krishna, is service to Krishna. I'll say it again. Whether it's another devotee or a family member or the man in the moon, if in that relationship it becomes a spiritual relationship, the spiritual dimension of the relationship is restored if my consciousness is Krishna is to be pleased. So go there in your internal thought process. How will Krishna be pleased? And when you're in that reflective mode, here's what happens. Your intelligence starts to operate better. And that intelligence can then provide you with options. And it can happen, I'm speaking step by step, but it can happen very quickly. Or you can even do it manually. You get out a piece of paper and or your computer or whatever it is, and what are some of the options? You do a little brainstorming session with yourself or with another, or however you like to do things, whatever circumstance permits. And then you consider, here's like 6, 7, 8 options of here are possible things I can do to please Krishna in this circumstance. And then you eliminate some, then you have some remaining, and you select from the menu. But what doesn't change is you're in the mode of goodness, you're reflecting on pleasing Krishna, your heart is with pleasing Krishna, and then you choose your options that are in the pleasing Krishna category. Now, I rather than brainstorming, you can hear some options. Here's 6, 7, 8 options you can select from. You can learn that art. You do it together with one another. Practice it even. Discuss it. Practically speaking, I'll mention. You just forgive. You don't try to prove yourself right. You go to a village elder and ask the village elder, what do I do in this circumstance? You can ask the village elder to mediate. You just make some list of things that you can do. And if you're not clear, find somebody that's clear. That what are some options when you're in a situation like this? And then you move resting upon the pleasing Krishna principle. And that I want to spiritualize my life, and part of my life is I want to spiritualize this relationship. And it's a challenge when you feel misunderstood, and quite likely the other person also feels misunderstood, and that makes it, even more complicated because you both feel misunderstood. And so that there's ego, but ego's the obstacle of ego is melted by bhakti. That's the good news. The entanglements of material existence are driven by false ego. I want to be the enjoyer, etc., etc. So if that disappears by bhakti, Krishna is to be the enjoyer, then in principle, as bhakti becomes stronger and stronger, then these conflicts, misunderstandings, etc., can be easily crossed over. And supposing it doesn't change, supposing you do all those nice things and it doesn't change, it's still, you're misunderstood and you're feeling misunderstood, and the other person's likewise. Go and strengthen the position of respect, because this other person in the devotee community, they're a devotee, they have bhakti in their heart, that's why they're doing devotional service. Let me respect the bhakti that's in their heart, and I may not have unrealistic expectations of my relationship with this person, but continue to be respectful, even though there's this obstacle of misunderstanding and feeling misunderstood. And that, in other words, you leave it up to Krishna to help you and them, not help them, help you and them get beyond this obstacle, because it's not pleasing to Krishna. Both of you. So if you stay in that mood of service and respectfully regard the bhakti within another person and continue to commit yourself to becoming pure. I heard something very nice from a nice devotee. When there's a conflict or there's this thing that people feel something that I've said or done, my first reaction is to introspect and see, where is this coming from within me? What is it within me that's triggering their regard for me or my behavior or my speech or my something, my existence? What is it within me that's triggering this? Something must be there. And something must be there within me that Krishna wants an obstacle in my relationship with him to be addressed. So take responsibility where you can act, which is your own heart. And don't dwell on the deficiency of another person because they just don't understand me, or they've got the wrong understanding and they're pushing the wrong. It's just don't finger point. Introspect and try to make the heart more pure. That's universally something that one can do when there's misunderstanding between devotees. Easier said than done, but that's our life's work, is making progress in this regard. Okay?
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Someone had their hand up in your group. Can you see the name? Shravan Kumar. So, can you, whoever, Satyavrata, coordinate this, please? You call on people.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavat Pranam. Thank you, Maharaj, for your association. Maharaj, one question you was mentioning that sharing confidential things with non-devotees.
Yes.
So in that aspect, one question: what about sharing confidential and vulnerable things with devotees whom we may not have sufficient faith that they may not be able to handle things? So when within a community we have either peers or immediate some senior devotees, but there might be some situation that we might have some confidential, some vulnerable thing, that some sensitive matter, and we might have to take some decision, but we may not have that. We might be, so sensitive that how they might handle the information or the matter. And then that's a challenge.
I think I understand your question. And my response to what I think I understand your question to be is you may pause. This is the brainstorming session now. You may pause and wait till you get some clarity from Supersoul. Or you may submit your inquiry to a confidential superior that understands you and you trust to maintain confidentiality, and you seek their input, not their Supersoul, but they're close to Supersoul and they're experienced and wise, and not like you want them to decide this for you, but you want their guidance. And what should you do in this particular, with all the particulars. And, not like because you did that, you have to do what they say, but they're just guiding you to take a look at what your options are. And that's another, what you can do in a situation that's perplexing. A third option is you test the water a little bit. You engage in a relationship with that person or persons with whom there's something delicate and sensitive and confidential, and you engage in exchanges with them, service exchanges in particular, where the trust is strengthened. And, paramount when something that's very sensitive and confidential is you don't want confidentiality breached. One of the best things to do yourself is to be very conscientious about not breaching confidentiality of others in you, unless that other who shared something that's confidential, you get their explicit permission to share with another person or or widely or whatever. Don't, you personally uphold confidentiality, you'll be protected from, more likely, you'll be protected from having your request for confidentiality being breached. Dharma rakshata rakshataha. It's a very important relationship question. Be the exemplar of confidentiality and be circumspect about things that may be detrimental to others if not properly understood or whatever. You don't want harm to come to them. So it takes intelligence, it takes your sensitivity, and that's a gift that comes from Krishna. Okay? Hare Krishna.
Sande Prabhu. Sande Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much Maharaj for giving this extra mercy to all of us, Maharaj. So, Maharaj, my question is not from this topic. I was facing some problem. I want to understand that what is the principle of giving charity according to one's realization. Like while practicing, we come across many groups of devotees with many projects. So keeping priority to stick to our own group while giving contribution, is it fine or not okay, Maharaj?
I understand your question, and I like diversity. Liking diversity means some people may go on this side of the spectrum. Some persons may go on that side of the spectrum, and some persons may be somewhere else in the spectrum. And it's quite okay. Diversity is quite okay. And it's an individual decision. It's nice in principle. This is kind of, my personal view. It's nice in principle to be charitable to some degree with things that strike your heart, although you're primarily concerned with X or X and Y and Z. Let's take, for example, what's going on in the Ukraine. And I don't know what the devotees in India are doing. I imagine they're concerned. And there are channels whereby something can go to the devotees in Ukraine. And it doesn't have to be something, that's major, but it's only natural to want to do something. Here's a little example that just came to my attention 2 days ago. There's one devotee that makes very little money, but he wanted to do something. So he in his relationship with somebody makes T-shirts, and somebody said, I'd like to give 1,000 T-shirts to the devotees in the Ukraine because they probably have some hardship. And it turns out it's not just the devotees in the Ukraine, it's those who have been displaced from the Ukraine and they're in some other place. And they're in greater difficulty for their maintenance and their well-being than those that remained in the Ukraine. Now, that's an example. So it doesn't require something great, but something. And some persons may say, something on another side of the spectrum. I want to make a major sacrifice, or not just for this, but whatever it is, the cause of book distribution or in the world, or the cause of building a nice temple for Krishna in my locality, or something. Every person that has resource has to be connected with their heart and connected with the principle of Dharma. And according to principles of Dharma, you act. And according to so you apply it. Different persons are going to apply that dharmic principle of charity in a different way. Make sure that when you do give charity, it's being received by a source that's going to use it for what you intended. Or it can just be, giving gifts to a brahmana because they're brahmanas. I heard a nice example from Borijan Prabhu. Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Bhakti Siddhanta, and every year conducted Vrindavan Parikrama. And one of the places they visited was Radhakund. And if you've been to Radhakund, you know around Radhakund there's older people. They're ladies, widows, and Babajis, and they sit by the side of the, and they have their little bowl there, and they just are doing their sadhana. Bhaktisiddhanta chastised his aristocratic followers from Delhi that were looking and passing by these poor people. It doesn't mean that next time you go to Radhakund, you have to make a beeline for those people and do something. But he was recognizing their mentality and chastising the mentality, saying, oh, you think that now you're in the realm of bhakti, you don't have to do karmakanda anymore. Because karmakanda says you give charity to others and you benefit. They're dedicating their lives to Krishna's name. So, I want to give because then I'll get some credit because I gave to somebody who's chanting Krishna's name, but you don't want to do that. So, charity for the right recipient can have different principles, personally, cultivated and managed. Important is the principle of charity. So it's included in your question, but important is the principle of charity and recognizing what's the right recipient of charity, and ultimately the purpose is pleasing Krishna. So I know some people, and they're really dedicated to book distribution, and whatever financial resource they have, it's maximized in the area of book distribution. And that means they may not be giving to this and that and the other thing and the other thing and the other thing, but that's where their heart is, and that's very pleasing. Some persons is deity worship. Some persons is temple construction. Some persons is something else and something else. Food for life, so it's a different person. So it's fine. Diversity is fine. Stay with principle. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Kalpana Mataji.
I would like to read her question, Maharaj. My wife's questions.
Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. My question is, on what strength one take commitment in Krishna consciousness, as offense are more severe if one does not fulfill after committing to Guru.
If one does not do what?
If one does not fulfill his commitment to Krishna, to Guru and Krishna.
What to do when commitments are left unfulfilled? That's the question?
Yes, Maharaj.
That's the question, yes?
If commitment is not fulfilled, then offenses becomes more severe in that case.
So you're making a
What we
statement.
should
What's
do?
the question?
Maharaj, her question is that now suppose she has taken some commitments, but she is not able to fulfill. So by that she is committing some offenses. So what she is supposed to do, whether should take commitment or not take commitment?
Oh, make commitment that's manageable, and if you have difficulty after making the commitment and find it's for some reason, XYZ reason, it's become difficult, you go to that person to whom you made that commitment and you express and seek guidance. What should I do?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Maintain the relationship and the integrity that you have in your relationships. Supposing, for example, you have a commitment at a temple, or to a friend or something. By such and such date, I'll have done such and such thing. And I think it's very reasonable. And then something comes up and you're unable to do that. You go to the person and say, it looks like I'm not going to be able to meet that commitment. Is that okay? I can commit it. I can complete it by such and such date. Is that okay? So it's relationship. You stay committed to the relationship, and if there's some adjustment that's needed, then you go to the person that you have that relationship with, and you seek their blessings, whatever, and you maintain the relationship, because relationships are important, and keeping your word is important. Next.
Bharati Mataji.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Bharti's question is, if a husband is a non-devotee and wife is a devotee, then it's a challenge for wife to move ahead in spiritual life.
Yes.
Then what should we do? Due to this, sometimes conflict also arises.
Well, a little sharing. Because of my involvement in China, I'm aware that over 90% of the devotees in China are women compared to men. And probably the same percentage of those women who are married, because some women are not married, those women who are married, over 90% are married to men who are not devotees. So you may be aware of some situation. I'm aware of a lot of situations. And yes, it's problematic for the whole yatra, because there's conflict, or there's high potential for conflict. And how to navigate that territory is the question. And a big answer has to do with some of the same principles. You maintain respect. You recognize there's this phrase, the needs, interests, and concerns of the other. And you respect the needs, interests, and concerns of the others in a reasonable manner. And if you maintain your Krishna consciousness while being respectful of the needs, interests, and concerns of another, something happens. And that something that happens is the other recognize that you're gracious. Now, some persons may be exploitative, and that's another dynamic. But if you're consistently being respectful of their needs, interests, and concerns, there's some boundaries, and that's relationship-based. Where are some boundaries? A big area for devotee, non-devotee is the diet. Because non-devotees may not be vegetarian. So what do they do in China? They have 2 sets of pots. And for the family, they cook non-vegetarian. And for themselves, they cook that which can be offered to Krishna in a different set of pots. So how it plays out depends on the particulars, but the principle is respect. Same principle as we covered earlier. And then that person who has that situation may need some guidance from a senior devotee, and it's really helpful if you have some association with others that are going through a similar situation. A peer association with somebody that's got a little experience, as you do, and don't get into commiserating, let's get them, and let's change them, and something that's not how people are going to change. It's by respect and recognizing their needs and interests and concerns within some boundaries. And that's, relationship by relationship. Where does that boundary go? Where do you draw the line? If the person asking this question really wants some further discussion, there are counselors that are in China that deal with this all the time. And you can find out who they are. I can give you a name if you really want to pursue that, and they can tell you who they are. And, you know, either if they speak English, you can speak with them directly, or through an interpreter or translator, speak with them. What are some of the things that you do there in China, where the wife is a devotee and the husband's a non-devotee, to maintain integrity in the relationships? What are some of the things that you work on with those couples? And I'm telling you very clearly, is respect. The fundamental point is respect. Because when respect isn't there, if you're respectful, it garners respect. Just like this other principle. If you honor confidentiality, it's going to garner confidentiality for something that you may share. It doesn't guarantee anything, but it by carrying a certain quality, it helps others develop that quality, just by having that quality, by association. In other words, what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita is true.
Amlan Prabhu. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Maharaj, I have a question. In Grihastha life,
Just a second. Could you have that person speaking go full screen so I can see his face? Do you know how to do that? Okay, go for it. Hi, Bolt. I can see you.
Yes. Maharaj, in Grihastha life, there were children in the devotee, but parents are not undevotee. So, and parents don't want the children should go in the Krishna consciousness. So, how to handle on it? And children also need the parents' blessings also. How to handle?
This is Grihastha Counseling 101. And I'm not a Grihastha. I would suggest that you go to the Grihastha counseling counselors. And because each situation is a little different. And in parenting, how the children are educated and what values they're encouraged, what diet they're encouraged. This can be a jugular issue in a marriage if there's such vast differences between how children are raised and that what spiritual values they have and hold and live with. I know a number of situations where it's just fine, and it's just fine when the devotee in the family is very respectful to their spouse. Even there's differences when the devotee is very respectful to their spouse, the matter is handled much more amicably. So my response is those two things. If somebody really wants a well-guided answer to this, go to those who are Grihastha counselors. There is one devotee who Satyavrata knows. His name is Nityananda Pran, and I know he's going to India in June. And he has become a certified parental counselor. And he can help somebody that has that situation because of training and his personal experience, etc. But there may be some people right there in India that have that skill. So go to somebody that has that skill, not just like, by common sense, but common sense plus some formal training in this area. That's a good person to go to. And others who have been through some similar situations, take guidance from those who have been through similar situations. How have they worked their way through those situations? But stay with the principles of respectful relationships. Because when that's not there, everything breaks down. Okay.
Hello, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Thank you for your personal association, and also thank you for creating the Seva group. We hear Prabhupada's lecture and discuss systematically. So, Maharaj, many of us feel that, it is uplifting and it is kind of revealing our internal life, anarthas and mind, intelligence, how they work. My question is basically, any practical do's and do nots in Bhagavad Gita group that we should follow?
Any particular Bhagavad Gita group that you should follow? That's your question?
Yeah. Do's and do nots.
Oh, is your question, in your Bhagavad Gita study group, could I list some do's and do nots applicable for your study group? That's what you're asking?
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
Okay. Well, I've listed some. I'll repeat them. Always remain respectful. Honor differences. Try to encourage, as a friend will encourage another friend, remembrance of Krishna. The manner in which you engage in your interactions, try to nourish the kind of like, a guiding principle. Nourish remembrance of Krishna as you're going forward. The negative is minimize or completely don't jump on the case of somebody if something comes up that's not from scriptural authority. But if somebody comes up with something that's not clear to your group, what's the scriptural authority behind this? In a respectful manner, you ask. Prabhuji, that was very interesting. Could you share with us what's the scriptural authority for that interesting thing you just said? So the principle is respectful, that the manner of communication at the heart level, not just the mouth level, is respectful. And then you try to abide in your group, sticking to principles that are from Scripture. I'll give a little example. Somebody from China reads Prabhupada's books really carefully, and they ask all these, once a week I allow them to ask all these really detailed, delicate questions about all kinds of things. So one came up, you can look it up, Bhagavad Gita 7.4, where Prabhupada writes that Buddhi is, his language is Mahatattva, but represents Mahatattva. Buddhi represents Mahatattva. So the devotee wanted to know how to understand that statement. I've taken about a week to consult with 8 different scholarly devotees to understand their understanding. And now I'm in the process of assembling a authoritative answer that's respecting, only a few devotees had the same take on that understanding. So be respectful that others are going to have a different understanding, but the summary that I'm preparing, hopefully today, will be with resting upon scriptural authority, not just this opinion, that opinion. But then besides saying, I don't know. That's easy. But what is there in Scripture that's addressing that question? Because it's right in Prabhupada's purport. And then there's a foundation for it, turns out, scripturally. It's not easily discernible, but it's there. So that's a do and a do not. Don't bash others that may say something that you don't know. Where is that from? just abide by the principle of respect and stick to authoritative statements from Scripture and our acharyas. And encourage their inquisitive spirit. The inquisitive spirit is to remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. That's the principle that we conduct our activities in Bhagavad Gita study groups by. Encouraging inquisitiveness into the nature of Krishna. Okay?
Yeah. Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Okay. Thank you for a nice question.
Gauri Shankar Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Please accept my humble worship. Thank you, Maharaj, for giving your mercy. Maharaj, my question is that we already know that the degree of familiarity affects the respect in the relationship. Right, ma'am? A degree of familiarity affect the respect in the relationship.
Yes.
Particularly when our degree of familiarity is very high with the family members. At that time, when I don't know when I'm crossing the level of familiarity, because the reaction from the side comes later on. So how to check Maharaj in the beginning itself, whether I'm crossing a certain level of familiarity with the devotees, with the family members, in the beginning itself.
Okay. Just a comment on your manner of speech. Your sentence speed, as it gets closer to the end of the sentence, starts going really fast, and I can't pick up everything you're saying because you speak really fast. I think I got it. Going into the future, try to modify the speed that comes at the end of your sentences because it'll help me catch your point. And so going back to your question, let me repeat what I've understood from your question is, when you have close relationships, there's the risk of familiarity, and how do you minimize that negative risk, that familiarity risk when you have close relationships? Because we want close relationships, starting with family, etc. So what's to be done to minimize the risk? That's your question?
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay. Let me remind you of the fact, to help to respond to your question, let me remind you of the fact that only Brahminically initiated devotees touch the deity. Everybody else doesn't in temples. They see the deity from a distance. There's an altar. Generally, the altar is raised, so they're looking up and they're from a distance, and they can remain respectful. Someone, by good fortune, becomes qualified, become recognized as a Brahmana, they receive Brahminical initiation, and now they're on the altar, they're touching the deity, they're bathing the deity, they're dressing the deity, they're proximate to the deity, and there's the risk of familiarity with the deity. So what's the protection for the Brahmana to not become familiar with the deity? Well, there's a lot of internal cleansing before they get Brahminical initiation and get in the circumstance where there's familiarity potential in their dealings with the deity. And then there's procedures. Once that preliminary purification of the heart has been successfully executed and recognized, then there's procedures in the deity worship to maintain that respect, starting with the view of approaching the deity on behalf of Guru. And it can become a ritual, it becomes just a routinized, and one forgets that they're serving on behalf of their Guru. Their mantras and everything is on behalf of. So if respect for Guru is there, then it helps significantly in not becoming familiar with the deity. Because for the starting point of familiarity is familiarity with Guru, the one from whom I've received whatever it is that I've received. And the gratitude in the heart subsides because now I've become familiar. So that was a risk that happened with Prabhupada. Many persons who became his personal servant went away because they became familiar, because they got close, and that respect disappeared because they got close. And those that were successful in not disappearing maintained respect. So that's the antidote for familiarity in family and other relationships that are close relationships where there's lots of interaction is maintaining respect. So now, what's the principle that respect goes to? Whether it's in a marriage or some other relationship that there's lots of interaction. And it rests upon bhakti, knowledge, but more than knowledge is the devotion that you have and recognizing the devotion that the other has. Because we associate closely with devotees and we carefully guard against the association of asat people. Close association with asat people is not our life. So those that are sat, those that are sadhu, those that are devotee people, the respect goes there. So then now you have this concentric circle image again. Krishna is at the center, Guru and sadhus are the next, the family members are next, and those with whom I regularly associate are next, the concentric circles go out. So keep your respect proper in relation to Krishna, those who are guiding you in your spiritual life in the past and the present. Maintain respectful attitude. And if there's some differences that come up, respectfully, they can be brought so that there's not this lingering obstacle that says, like Arjuna, wait a minute, you said this over here, you said that over there. You're contradicting yourself, Krishna. He didn't get upset. He just sought clarification. So that's certainly appropriate. And then when there's close association, you don't lose respect. That fundamental respect is there in all relationships, starting with those ones at the center.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
It's not a guarantee, but it's an antidote.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Last question from Subramaniam Prabhu's wife.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept my most humble obeisances at your lotus feet. My question was, you're speaking about sadhana, which includes the quality of how we take up chanting, reading, or dealing with our Vaishnavas. So means to me, it is we are quantitatively doing this, chanting, reading, and all. So how we come to the qualitative chanting or reading?
How we come to qualitative?
Oh, how to go from quantity to quality? That's your question.
Yes, Maharaj.
Utsaha nishchaya dhairyat. Tat tat karma pavartanat. That's how we do. Those things that are favorable, we do. Those things that are unfavorable, we refrain. And that brings purity, that brings quality. When the heart becomes pure through proper execution of bhakti and staying away from unwholesome, you have to be patient. I've had, in the past month, I've had 3 discussions with people that are impatient. They're very enthusiastic, and they're quite impatient. So I shared with them what Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote about being impatient. So being enthusiastic is great. and increasing your quantitative is great. And make sure that you're very patient to have a connection with Krishna, not just a quantitative performance of things, a qualitative. And that you have to be patient, because Krishna's not, Krishna doesn't, he's not obliged. We stamp our little foot and Krishna's got to jump. That's not how it works. So quality will take some time. So we remain patient while we're doing quantity. And what keeps us going is we have firm conviction in the purification process, that the purification will come, and then comes quality. So effort, like anything, with enthusiasm, but patience, resting upon our confidence in the bhakti process. Are you patient, or are you impatient? Don't be too patient. Don't be complacent. Be enthusiastic, and be patient, with firm faith in the means to reach the goal, the sadhana to reach the sadhya. Okay, looks like our time is up.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Prabhupada ki jai.
His Holiness Prabhupada Swami Maharaj ki jai.
Jai Maharaj.
Thank you.